Hi, this is Brad Willis, alias bwilliw. If you happen to play me sometime, I am the commander of the FONO Legion, FONO, which stands for Friends of No One in iOS. And we are actually rather friendly, to tell you the truth. But, the happy rainbow bunnies did not sound too much like the war machine that we all want to sound like, so we went with that. We have a very good Legion if you have an interest. We have a Tier 4 minimum, and we have no, I would say, racism, no xenophobia, not really much, if any, bad language. We're not holier than thou, but I think we have a very fun Legion with low pressure, and I try to keep things light, and we try to treat people very fairly. So if you're looking for a Legion or looking for some people that can blow up tanks, one more commercial before we get started with the video. I run, I should say, the Iron Force fan group, which is located on Facebook at www.facebook.com/groups/Iron Force fan group. When we did this thing last year, we had about 7,500, flip that. We had about 1,000 players. Now we got about 7,500. So we're really growing a lot. And it's not quite as busy as one or two of the other groups, which is probably good because you can post something and it doesn't immediately disappear. But you will get to know some of your players and have questions answered, that sort of thing. I think it's a good place for you to check out if you are so inclined, and it is free. So what we're going to talk about, this is going to be Iron Force training video number 2. We did number 1 about a year ago. There have been some changes in the game, and most of you already know about that, so we won't spend too awfully much time on that, but we will talk a little about what has changed, and we'll talk about some techniques and that sort of thing. One of the obvious things that change is kind of what you're looking at. And you can see my tank here is a Centaurus, which is a Tier 6. So Tier 6 are fairly new, and they are the dominant tanks in the game now. They really are. And they're expensive. I don't know if the cost will come down someday or what, but they are expensive. But we're going to take a look at the 3 Tier 6 tanks very briefly. Serpens, you have to get, I don't know, what is it, a couple of these gold cups, something. Don't quote me on that. Very hard to get. You see a few of them here and there. They're very hard to kill, right? I probably will never have one, but some people do. And if you see one, look out, right? And of course, I have Centaurus, which is probably considered to be the second most dominant tank in the game. Don't pay too much attention to the stats you see now. Once this thing gets upgraded, it's kind of a monster, and I'll show you in a minute where I'm at. And then the third Tier 6 is the Fornax, which has some similarities to, let's say, the Scorpius. But one thing you're going to notice, and I think it's worth noting, and let's just kind of compare, like Centaurus is kind of like Pavo on steroids, and Fornax is kind of like Scorpius on steroids. But just take a look at the base, okay? Now, we're going to start off with Fornax just as an example, okay? Just remember these numbers. Attack 600, armor 3,800. Now, compare that to a base Scorpius. 250 versus the 600, again with Fornax. And instead of 3,800, 1,350. Huge difference. Let's look at Pavo for a minute, okay? Look at Pavo's base. 200 and 1,250 armor. Compare that to Centaurus. 520 and 3,750 armor. So these things, when you add paint to these tanks, or when you add technology, and we're going to talk a little more about that in a minute, remember that it's a percentage of the base numbers. And the base numbers on these Tier 6s are light years ahead of the other tiers. So they're really going to be the dominant tanks in the game. If you can acquire one, do so, but it's tough. And, they are expensive. There's no question. And there's people that have spent a lot of money on this game. There are people who spend nothing. I know people that have never spent a penny, and they've gotten great tanks, and they brag about it, and rightly so. Rightly so. If you can get a Tier 6 just by playing and saving your gems, God bless you, man. You're ahead of the game. I know one person and it's not me, who spent over $10,000 US on this game, if you can imagine. And I actually told this person, I said, as your financial advisor, which I'm actually not, but I said, I do not advise you to spend this kind of money on video games, right? Put it to something that's more important. But the short of it is, if you can get a top tier tank, do so. If you cannot acquire a Tier 6, I would say the next tank that you're going to want to target is a Pavo, with the intent of getting an S-Pavo. Because an S-Pavo, all the S tanks can compete. They can. But they won't. They're just not the Tier 6, but they can. And I think the S-Pavo is the tank that can probably at this stage compete the best, other than, of course, a S Monosaurus, and not everyone can get those. So let's go back for a moment and take a look at some new things. But we're going to look at, well, let's look at my tank for a second. Let's just see kind of where it's at, okay? You can see here in the garage that well, no, that's not what I'm looking for. Hang on, I'm looking for armory. Sorry about that. So you can see my attack. I've got 35% attack paint on, and I'm also running, I think it's 25 or 30% ground, the speed, the movement, okay, just to make this thing faster, because it's really not very fast. But you see I'm at almost 1300 attack. I'm at armor 6670. I'm at fire speed a little over 18, and my movement is 96. But again, remember, without that paint, it would be much, much slower. Okay, but you know, those are formidable numbers, and remember, this sucker has the double shot, so you're putting, you know, 1300 twice into somebody. You can go six shots in a matter of, you know, a very, very short period of time, which is actually something I did not like about Scorpius, because you shoot and then you wait and you wait and you wait for the sucker to reload, and it's just so frustrating while you get pummeled at the time by Pavo. Well, guess what? Now I've got the tank that's doing the pummeling. Another thing I want to point out to you is if you look at the top of the screen, you could see my rank with the 1 gold star, and there's a very few of you that might remember with my S-Scorpius I had 4 gold stars. Well, I have 2 accounts, and in the 4-star account is still the S-Scorpius. This was a new account that I established, first of all, just kind of for the hell of it, but ultimately for the purpose of acquiring this tank. And the reason I did that is I wanted to buy this thing basically the day that I was eligible, and the reason for that is I wanted to slaughter very easy to kill tanks. Now you might think, well, that's not very sporting, or that's kind of cruel. Well, first of all, understand a couple of things. This is a pay-to-play game. There's no question. Okay, there's skill involved, but most of it is who has the bigger tank. You know, if you have a big tier 4, tier 5, tier 6, you're going up against a smaller tank. He could be a wonderful player with a lot of skills and a lot of technique. You could be, you know, sloppy and not know what you're doing. You're going to win because you've got so much more attack and you've got so much more armor, and that's just the deal. But more specifically, the reason I wanted to do that was because I wanted to get this sucker upgraded. That's the only way I can compete. And you know, if I bought this in my 4-star account, right out of the box, I'm going to get 4-star competition, and it's going to be very, very hard for me to collect that cash that I need to upgrade this sucker. But when I started with, I think it was 1 silver star was the minimum, I'm just slaughtering them right and left. I mean, you know, 20, 30 to nothing, 25 to nothing, very common scores. 30 is not common, but 25, very, very common. And I was collecting a boatload of cash, and you need that cash to upgrade the tank. Say what you want. The faster you upgrade it, the better off you're going to be. So what we're going to do is, well, we'll look at something else that's new since my last update. It's not particularly new for most of you, but we'll just look briefly at technology. Technology was added within the last year. These will give your tank a little bit of a boost in certain areas, and they do make a big difference, actually. Depending on your tank, you can hold 1, 2, or 3 of these. Maybe someday they'll change that. There's a thermite shell that hits your opponent, lights them on fire. They burn for a while. That's not bad, but that's probably not your best choice. Most people use these 3 that you kind of see right here. Repair box, which will let you increase your, it'll give you some life. If somebody hits you while you're being repaired, you'll lose that. And as you upgrade, you get more of an effect, and it's also faster. But that'll let you bring back some armor, if you will. Laser rangefinder will, you can see right here, in my case, increases the damage. 489 inflicted on an enemy hit when your scope center is red. Okay, so big difference, especially like on a double shot. You know, that's almost an extra 1,000 points just from this. And then titanium armor plates. You see I'm at stage 14. One thing that's kind of interesting is, remember earlier I talked about the fact that the increase in technology and the increase with paint is off the base numbers of the tank. That's why the base makes such a big difference. But here you see these titanium plates. I'm at level 14 of, I think it's 26 so far, and I'm at 2663. My Scorpius is at, I believe it's at 23, and the numbers are almost identical. So you can see how much stronger this thing is going to be once I get up to that level. And it's just all about, what's that song go? All about the bass. I'd sing, but you turn it off now, so I'm not going to do that. But anyway, that's technology. In this case, you could see it's going to add where I'm at right now. As of when the upgrade finishes in a day or so, 2663 in terms of my armor. So if we go very briefly back to my stats, you see my armor is going to be roughly 66, 70. Add another 22 whatever onto that, 66, 76, 86. All of a sudden, I've got 9,000 armor. Big difference, right? And so that's certainly something you're going to want to pay attention to, and you're going to want to increase those numbers and focus probably on those main three. Just to go, again, briefly jumping around a little bit, but back to technology, the last one I didn't mention is airstrike. It sucks. So far, it sucks. I mean, you put a target on some guy, it looks kind of cool, and it seems like it doesn't do much. They can drive away from it. I would say, at least at this point, do not waste your time. So, having talked about some of those updates in the last year, we're gonna play a game. I'm gonna tell you what I'm thinking. I'm gonna try to be somewhat coherent. Now, one thing I will say is there are some differences in the maps versus last year. I think when I did it last year, we had factory and we had island. They've gotten rid of those. They've added since then Freight Yard and Fallen City earlier, okay, which are both pretty good maps. But one thing I will say is learn the map, and what you want to do is on some of these maps, I know exactly where the drops are going to occur. I know where they're going to occur every time. Okay, I don't know exactly the sequence, although you could figure it out. And the nice thing is you can go to those spots and collect something that'll make your fire speed much faster, or make your tank more powerful, or restore your armor, or give you some mines to drop on people. Really helpful. Those are things that can help you win the game, even though it is a game primarily of pay to play. The biggest tank wins. Certainly you can do some damage to someone, especially with these things. So it is important to learn the map. There's a lot of maps where I can drive pretty competently backwards. Okay, not perfect, but I've gone and I'm zipping all around corners backwards, and the person probably wonders how I do that. I'm just familiar with the map, and then usually I hit something else sooner or later, but familiarity will really help you a lot. So mostly I would stick to a map that you know. So now that we've done all this talking, let's play. So we're going to go to Freight Yard, which is actually the newest of the maps. Now, I'm going to try to talk to you while I'm playing and tell you what I'm thinking, and maybe give you some technique. Maybe. We'll see how it goes. Maybe it'll go well, maybe it won't. So let's go ahead and click on it and get it started. Now you want to be ready right off the go. When that screen comes up, be ready to shoot. No one in front of me. I know there's going to be a drop right here. I'm going to take it. Someone will probably shoot at me. He did, but it wasn't. So I know it's a light shot. There's another one. There's another drop down here. I see that. Now I could turn around and fight the guy. I'm just not ready to do it. We'll take the HPO. I'm going to hide over here for a second. We'll just restore it. Won't take long. You see I restored my armor. And we'll take the Southern Nights. Now we're going to go after something. So we've got, I got a bot right here. That line. That German guy's probably. I just saw that there was a first aid kit off to my left. You always want to have triple kill. Back to it. As you can see, I don't need it because my armor's off to my right. But if I start getting weak, I'm going to power on over there and damn it. So I'm not too worried about it. Now we got a Russian fellow, probably more of a threat than I used my last in-tool. I'm not crazy about that, but I like mine. And so we're going to go and grab this. When you refill your armor, hide around the corner like this. See where I'm at right now? I don't need to do it right now. Well, there's a guy right there. Russian fellow. But, in fact, I may... I will hide behind this building out on the... Well, he's... Take this box. I don't really like collecting ranking points all that much. Let's see if this first aid is still there. It's not. Okay, so we're just going to take this Pavo. And watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to come around behind this building. Where a lot of times I will upgrade my armor. Let's go ahead and just do that. Somebody who wants to come after me, good luck, man. Good luck. Might have, if he had I see now there's a situational awareness, first aid kit dead ahead. I look off to the right. Nope, no drop there. That's another drop location. I'm coming around to the left. There's our Russian. I didn't get it. I don't really want that ranking point. In fact, what's nice is a lot of times when you leave them, and the ranking points when you leave them, a lot of times other tanks will go after those ranking points. I can sorry about that. That was bad. If you quit with too many mines left, it's almost like you've lost. The red dot you might notice if you watch it. Now, I don't want that ranking point. I'm looking around. I got a mine. I don't have much armor. I'll go ahead and fill up. It just takes me a second. Let's look for some other competition. It's really not very strong competition. I think you guys can see that. That's okay. We're having a nice. At least the Russian fellow was crafting that. We got a diamond. Mines, I've got 16 seconds. I like to use this song. Over our German friend, we got 1 second. And we got 19 to nothing. But you know, you could see we had soft competition, right? You know, sometimes people go, well, you had soft competition. Well, yeah. I do get some tough competition, I might add. This just happened to be soft competition. So let's go ahead and exit this game, and then we'll just kind of wrap up this video. My shots were not tremendous, 73%. You know, I got $27,000 cash. But a couple things to pick up from this video, I think, is that we didn't have to use as much technique as we might sometimes. But again, situational awareness. Where do the drops occur, and where are they? You know, right? You know, I'm looking around. I'm constantly looking. Is there a first aid kit off in the distance? Is there a mine over there? And if it's something I want to work my way in that direction. How's my armor looking? Okay, if it's looking a little bit shaky, let's fill it up. But let's do it where we have less of a likelihood of someone sneaking up behind us and taking that away. Let's let it build up and then go back and fight them again. So, you know, again, that is a map that I know pretty well. I don't know if it's good or bad that we had such soft competition, but at least it let us have a nice little conversation and talk about the game a little bit and talk about some technique. So this has been a little bit longer than I wanted, so I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this video. So again, this is your training video number 2. Again, with emphasis on things like knowing your map, knowing where drops occur, situational awareness, and also covering some changes that have occurred in the last year. So once again, I do thank you for your time. Again, if you're Tier 4 above in iOS, certainly do encourage you to consider joining us over at FONO, F-O-N-O. I also run Earth Viper Android. I was with Earth Viper iOS last time I did a video. The Legion is now defunct. Android is kind of a joke of a Legion, really. I'm the commander, but I hardly play the thing, you know. So it's not a real serious hardcore Legion. I'm hardly even there, be honest with you. But you know, if you just have an Android tank, you don't really care. You play it every now and then. What the heck? Throw it at Earth Viper Android, and you know, just don't expect anything. You know what I'm saying? So we will wrap up this video. That is the recap and the Iron Force training video number 2. I hope you found it at least somewhat useful and interesting. If you have any questions or comments, as always, feel free to leave those in the remarks section here on YouTube. I do thank you for your time, and we will see you playing Iron Force.